Welcome to Tom's podcast. I'm Tom, and today I want to invite you to pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Maybe pour yourself a cup of tea, something warm, something comforting. Because this isn't just another podcast. This is a space for us to sit down together, like old friends catching up after a long day, and talk about the things that truly matter, the things that make life meaningful, especially when everything around us feels uncertain. If you've ever found yourself lying awake at night, wondering what it all means, why you're here, what you're really living for, you're not alone. And this episode is especially for you. I created this podcast as a safe place to reflect, to feel seen, and to remember that even in our most confusing seasons, there's still purpose. There's still beauty. There's still something worth holding on to. And today's episode touches on a question we all wrestle with, especially during hard times. What gives my life meaning? Over the past few years, the world has gone through so much: lockdowns, isolation, uncertainty. We were forced to slow down, to be still. And in that stillness, something happened. We began to hear the questions that our busy lives used to drown out. Questions like, why am I doing what I'm doing? What really matters to me? Am I living a life that feels true to who I am? Today, we're going to explore those questions together. We'll talk about the concept of why, the deep reason behind why we wake up each morning, why we keep going, and how that reason can carry us through even the darkest seasons of life. But before we dive in, a quick reminder: Tom's podcast drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday evening. So if you haven't already, make sure to follow us on Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, and Threads. That way, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll always be connected to this community of people who are on this journey with you. And hey, if this podcast means something to you, I'd love to hear about it. You can drop a comment or share a post and tag me. It's always heartwarming to know that someone, somewhere found a piece of themselves in these words. So wherever you are, on a walk, in your room, commuting home, I'm really glad you're here. This is your moment to pause, to reflect, and maybe, just maybe, to rediscover something inside yourself that's been waiting to be heard. Let's begin. Do you remember those quiet days during the lockdowns? When the streets were still, the air felt heavier, and time seemed to stretch? Everything slowed down, and for the first time in a long while, we were forced to just be. No rushing, no noise, just silence. And in that silence, many of us started to hear ourselves again. I still remember the exact moment I found out that Hanoi was going into lockdown. I was in New York at the time, and I had just come back from picking up groceries, masked up, gloved, distant from everyone. My phone buzzed with the news. Hanoi was closing its doors. Streets were emptying. People were told to stay inside. Shops were shuttering. I looked outside the window of my apartment and realized something surreal. New York and Hanoi, two cities I deeply care about, were both standing still. Thousands of miles apart, yet bound by the same invisible weight. It was a strange kind of unity, wasn't it? The entire world facing something together. Borders didn't matter. Status didn't matter. Suddenly, we were all vulnerable, all uncertain, all wondering how long this would last and what it would take from us. And for a brief moment, it felt like humanity was breathing in sync, afraid, yes, but also connected. And then my thoughts turned homeward, to Vietnam, to my friends, my family, my neighbors. I started thinking about people I used to pass by every day, the street vendors, the Xe-ôm drivers, the lady selling banh mi at the corner. People who lived day to day, who didn't have savings or backup plans. I wondered how they were surviving. Were they eating well? Did they have rent support? Could they afford to pause, like the rest of the world was being told to? It's easy to talk about slowing down and finding yourself when you have the privilege to do so. But for many, the lockdown wasn't a break, it was a breakdown, a breaking point. Families struggling to afford food, children missing school, not just for education, but for safety and nutrition. Entire communities left out of the conversation. And that realization hit me harder than I expected. Have you ever found yourself thinking about someone far away, someone you might not even know personally, but you can almost feel what they're going through? That's what it felt like. Every day, I'd see the same updates online. Photos of empty streets in Hanoi. Stories of neighbors sharing food, of volunteers bringing rice to low-income areas. Acts of kindness that reminded me, even in the darkest times, people still chose compassion, still chose to show up for each other. And in New York, the stories were similar, just painted in a different language. Healthcare workers burned out, yet showing up. Strangers leaving groceries on their neighbors' doorsteps. Musicians playing from balconies to lift spirits. Pain, yes, but also humanity everywhere. I think what moved me the most during that time was this shared sense of fragility. Suddenly, our routines, our jobs, even our plans, none of it was guaranteed. And when all the noise fell away, we were left with questions, big ones, about purpose, about connection, about what really matters when everything else is taken away. So I want to ask you something. During those long, still days of lockdown, did you feel it too? That quiet invitation to pause and reflect? That strange slowing down that gave you space to ask yourself, what am I living for? What do I really value? Who do I want to be when this is over? Sometimes it takes a global pause to help us hear what our hearts have been trying to say all along. And maybe, just maybe, this collective hardship was also a collective mirror, showing us not just what's broken, but what's worth saving. Let's keep going. Have you ever come across the word why in a way that made you stop and think? Not just as a simple question like, why is the sky blue, or why is this happening to me? But as something deeper, something that pulls you inward and asks, what's the reason I get up in the morning? What's the purpose behind everything I do? That's the kind of why we're going to talk about today. It's not just a question, it's a lifeline. In psychology and philosophy, this why is often linked to what we call a person's sense of purpose, or their reason for being. It's the fuel that keeps you moving forward, especially when things get hard. And sometimes it's the only thing that does. There's a story I want to share with you. It's about a man named Viktor Frankl. He was an Austrian psychiatrist and neurologist, but more than that, he was a Holocaust survivor. He was imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, places where hope was almost impossible to hold on to. In those camps, he witnessed unimaginable suffering. People stripped of everything: freedom, dignity, family, even their names. It was in that environment, in one of the darkest chapters of human history, that Frankl discovered something extraordinary: the power of purpose. He observed that the people who managed to survive the longest weren't necessarily the strongest physically. They were the ones who had something to live for, a reason, a why. Frankl later wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, where he shared his experiences and insights. One of the most powerful lessons from his story is this: those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. Think about that. When you have a deep reason for living, you can endure the unimaginable. You can find strength in the middle of despair. You can keep going, even when everything else tells you to give up. In the camps, Frankl himself held on to the hope of reuniting with his wife and the dream of one day sharing his ideas with the world. That was his why, and it became the light he followed through the darkness. Now, I want to bring this closer to home. We're not in a war zone, we're not in a concentration camp, but that doesn't mean we don't suffer. That doesn't mean we don't feel lost or overwhelmed or hollow inside. In our modern lives, many of us are surrounded by abundance, technology, entertainment, information, even comfort. And yet, so many people feel empty, anxious, directionless. Why is that? Could it be because we haven't found our why? Maybe you've felt it too. That quiet sadness at the end of the day, when everything's finally still, and you ask yourself, what am I really doing all this for? You go to work, pay bills, scroll through your phone, check notifications, make plans, chase goals. But somewhere deep inside, there's this lingering sense that something's missing. And I believe what's missing is meaning. Without a why, life becomes a loop. You wake up, go through the motions, and repeat. But when you have a why, even the hard days make sense. Even pain becomes part of something bigger. Struggles feel like stepping stones, not roadblocks, because you're going somewhere. You know why you're fighting. Frankl's story teaches us that meaning isn't something we find only in joy. Sometimes we discover it through pain. In fact, pain can be the very doorway to meaning. When life gets stripped down to its bare bones, when the job is gone, the plans are broken, the world turns upside down, we're given a rare opportunity, a chance to ask, what truly matters to me? And the answer to that question can change everything. Your why might be your family, your faith, your dream of building something beautiful. It might be your desire to help others, to heal, to teach, to create, to grow. It doesn't have to be grand or dramatic. It just has to be true. True to who you are and true to what lights something inside you. And once you start living from that place, once you align your daily life with your deepest purpose, you begin to feel more alive, more grounded, more resilient. So let me ask you, what is your why? Not what society says it should be, not what your parents wanted, not what your friends are chasing, but your why. That quiet fire inside of you that refuses to go out. That dream you keep pushing aside because life is too busy or too uncertain or too loud. Maybe you haven't found it yet, and that's okay. Maybe you're still searching. Maybe today's the first time you've even asked the question. That's okay too. But I promise you this, it's there, inside you, waiting. So today I want to invite you to start the search. Not with pressure, not with urgency, but with curiosity, with compassion. Sit with yourself. Listen, what makes you feel truly alive? What would you keep doing even if no one paid you? What would break your heart if you had to walk away from it? These questions matter. They are more than just thoughts. They are the beginning of your why. And once you find that, no challenge, no matter how great, can take it from you. Let's keep exploring. In the concentration camps, Viktor Frankl noticed something powerful, something that would become one of the foundations of his life's work. He saw that even in the most extreme, dehumanizing conditions, people responded in profoundly different ways. Over time, he began to see a pattern, and he grouped people into 3 distinct types. The first group were those who became capos, prisoners who collaborated with the guards in exchange for better treatment, more food, or temporary survival. They gave up a part of their humanity in order to stay alive. Frankl didn't judge them harshly. He understood that desperation can drive people to unthinkable choices. But he also saw the cost. Many capos, despite their privileges, lived with guilt, fear, and a sense of inner emptiness. Survival at any cost came with its own kind of death, of spirit, of integrity, of soul. The second group were those who lost all hope. They gave up. You could see it in their eyes. The light gone, the shoulders slumped, the refusal to eat or move or speak. For them, the suffering had eclipsed any sense of meaning, and without a reason to keep going, they simply faded. Frankl described this group with deep compassion because he understood how fragile the human heart can be when stripped of everything. These people were not weak, they were simply overwhelmed. And then there was the third group, the smallest but the most inspiring. These were the people who, even in the face of horror, found a reason to live. They held on to their why. Some dreamed of seeing their loved ones again. Some clung to faith. Others felt called to survive so they could bear witness, tell their stories, and or help others heal. They were not superhuman. They still suffered, still cried, still feared, but they had something inside that refused to give up. And that something gave them the strength to endure. Now, I want to pause here and ask you a question. If you were placed in those same unimaginable conditions, which group do you think you'd fall into? It's a confronting question, I know, but it's also a powerful one. Because even though we're not in a concentration camp, life still tests us, especially in times like these. Think back to the pandemic, to the long months of lockdown, the fear, the isolation, the uncertainty, the loss. People responded in different ways, didn't they? Some of us, like the first group, found ways to survive by controlling whatever we could, sometimes even at the expense of others. We saw people hoarding supplies, spreading misinformation, trying to manipulate systems to feel a sense of power in a powerless time. Others, like the second group, simply gave in to despair. We stopped trying. We scrolled endlessly. We disconnected. We let ourselves go numb. And for a while, that felt like the only option. But then there were those who, like the third group, turned inward and asked, what can I learn from this? How can I grow through this? What is my purpose now? They used the stillness to rediscover their passions. They reached out to others. They created. They helped. They dreamed. They didn't deny the pain, but they let it sharpen their sense of purpose. The truth is, we always have a choice. Maybe not in what happens to us, but always in how we respond. That's what Frankl believed. That even when everything is taken from us, we still have the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose our attitude in any given set of circumstances. So today, I want to ask you, which group are you choosing to be in? Are you clinging to control at the expense of your values? Are you giving in to hopelessness? Or are you digging deep, reconnecting with your purpose, and choosing to rise even in small, quiet ways. None of this is meant to shame. Life is hard, and our reactions are human. But awareness gives us power, and power gives us responsibility. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep choosing, again and again, the path that aligns with who you truly are. You can't always control the storm, but you can decide who you are in the middle of it. Let's keep going. So now the question becomes, how do we actually find our why? If it's so powerful, if it can help us endure suffering and give our lives meaning, where do we even begin? Here's the good news. You don't have to find a grand, life-defining purpose all at once. You don't need to quit your job or climb a mountain or write a best-selling book. You can start small. In fact, starting small is often the most powerful way. Maybe for you, it begins with reading a book you've always been curious about, or learning a new skill, something just for you, not because someone told you to. Maybe it's waking up a little earlier to watch the sunrise, or making time each evening to journal your thoughts. Or helping a neighbor, reaching out to a friend you haven't spoken to in a while, or volunteering your time for something that matters to you. These small steps may seem insignificant, but they are seeds. And when you nurture them consistently, they grow into something meaningful. You start to notice what brings you joy, what energizes you, what feels right in your soul. And that's where your why begins to take shape. Another powerful way to get closer to your why is to pay attention to the simple moments that make you feel alive. Maybe it's cooking. Maybe it's building something with your hands. Maybe it's teaching, caring for animals, or making art. These aren't distractions. They're signals. They're little whispers from your deeper self saying, hey, this matters. And then there's reflection. Take time to really ask yourself, what do I value? What kind of person do I want to be? What moments in my life have made me feel the most fulfilled? Not the most successful, but the most whole. Sometimes our why is hidden in the moments we overlook. Let me tell you a story that moved me deeply. It's about a man who lost his wife to cancer. They had been together for decades. When she passed away, he felt like his entire reason for living had vanished. He spiraled into depression. He withdrew from friends. Every day felt heavy and gray. But one morning, he was sitting in a park where they used to walk together. And he saw a young couple, laughing, holding hands, completely immersed in each other. Instead of pain, he felt a strange warmth, a memory, a reminder. He realized that what he and his wife had shared was beautiful, and that beauty didn't disappear just because she was gone. He decided that his new why would be helping others experience that kind of love and connection. He began volunteering at a hospice center, offering comfort to families going through grief. It wasn't easy, but it gave him a new sense of meaning. He found a way to turn his pain into purpose. And that changed everything. That's the thing about life's hardest moments. They can break us, yes, but they can also break us open. They make us softer, more compassionate, more aware of what really matters, and sometimes they guide us back to our why. So if you're in a hard season right now, if you're confused, burned out, grieving, or just feeling lost, this could be your moment. Not to have all the answers, but to start asking better questions. Start small, start honest, and don't do it alone. In fact, I'd love for you to share one small goal you're working on right now. It could be anything: learning to cook, calling your parents more often, taking daily walks, writing a short story. Whatever it is, leave a comment on Instagram, X, or Threads and tag Tom's podcast. You never know who you might inspire just by sharing. Because your why doesn't just belong to you. It becomes a light for others too. Let's keep searching. Let's keep growing together. So today we've taken a quiet, honest journey into something that often goes unspoken, our why. That deep inner reason that keeps us going when things fall apart. We've explored what it means to live with purpose, not just exist. We've looked at how, in the darkest of times, whether in the horrors of history or the silence of our own struggles, those who find their why are the ones who endure, who grow, and who shine. We talked about Viktor Frankl and his extraordinary resilience in the face of unimaginable suffering. We learned that meaning doesn't always come from joy or comfort, but sometimes from loss, from pain, from the moments that break us open and show us what truly matters. We saw how the way we respond to hardship, the group we choose to belong to, can define the path our life takes next. we unpacked some real, gentle ways to begin finding our why. Not by chasing some lofty purpose, but by starting small, by learning something new, caring for ourselves, serving others, or simply pausing long enough to listen to the questions in our hearts. And maybe most importantly, we reminded ourselves that we're not alone in this journey. So as we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with a quote by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, one that captures everything we've been talking about in just a few simple words. He said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Let that sink in. If you know why you're living, why you're showing up, why you're growing, why you keep trying, you can face almost anything. And I believe that for you. I believe that whatever you're going through right now, whatever confusion, heaviness, or uncertainty you're carrying, you have the strength to walk through it. Not because it's easy, but because something inside you matters enough to fight for. So start with one small step. Look for meaning in the little things. Don't wait for clarity to come knocking. Instead, begin moving gently in the direction of what feels true, and trust that over time, your why will become clearer and louder and more alive. If this episode has stirred something in you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it. Maybe a friend, a sibling, or someone quietly navigating a hard season. And if you haven't already, make sure to follow Tom's podcast on Instagram, X, and Threads. That way, you'll stay updated every time we release a new episode. We're here with you every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night. And one more thing. If this episode meant something to you, if it gave you a moment of clarity or comfort, please tap that like button or leave a quick review. It might seem small, but it truly helps the podcast reach more people who might need to hear these messages. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for choosing to show up, to listen, to grow. It means more than you know. Take care of yourself. Stay curious. Stay kind. And until next time, have a peaceful evening, and I'll see you again on Tuesday.